Hey friends, so you're ready to learn about declination, one of my favorite extra tools in the astrologer's toolkit. If you've heard people describe a planet as out of bounds or maybe refer to the parallel aspect, then you've heard that person using declination. So what is declination anyway, and why should you add it to your collection of astrology techniques? Well, first off, declination is just another way of measuring where a planet is in space. In the regular horoscope wheel, you're seeing a visual representation of that planet's measurement using longitude. Declination measures the planet's latitude, which is a totally different measurement. The regular chart wheel only represents that one measurement of longitude, so we could think of it as more of a flat or 2D representation. But when you add in declination, you're starting to see the sky more in 3D. Right now, we don't have an astrology software program that gives us that visual 3D representation of the chart that would include declination and some other measurements, but I hope someday one of you software savvy folks out there makes that happen. Right now, we can only see the declination in a list of numbers that our programs show us, and I think that's one of the reasons why not as many people use it. But getting back to declination and what it is. To visualize declination, picture the equator. Now, imagine that line of the equator around the Earth extending from the Earth and into space, and we call that the celestial equator, or just the equator projected out onto the sky. Declination measures a planet's distance north and south of that imaginary equator in space. To find a planet's declination in your software, you just need to look it up in the program, which will have a list of each planet's declination number in a grid or a table. I'll show you how to do this at the end of this video. But now that we have a sense of what declination is, how do we use it in astrology? Well, first we use declination to identify a couple of additional aspects. These are called the parallel and the contra-parallel. In short, the parallel is interpreted as having a similar quality as a conjunction, and a contra-parallel is thought to have a similar quality as an opposition, and that's in terms of chart interpretation. Now, most astrologers are in agreement about the interpretation of the parallel, but there are some different opinions out there about the contra-parallel, with some astrologers suggesting it has a challenging dimension similar to the opposition, and others suggesting that the contra-parallel is actually a beneficial aspect. I just like to use both of these aspects to see a connection between planets that I might not have seen otherwise. And I'd love to share a little pro tip with you here. The strongest aspect in astrology is found when planets are both conjunct and parallel. So conjunct via our regular longitudinal measurement, or in other words, according to what you can see visually in the horoscope, and then also parallel by declination. In the night sky, this is really obvious. The first time you see it, it'll be a total no-brainer, because when two planets are parallel and conjunct, those two planets are going to be right next to each other in the night sky. When planets are conjunct but not parallel, that's not normally the case. Learning how to spot parallels and then looking to see if those two planets are also conjunct or vice versa is one of the best and easiest ways to start using declination. And it might be the most important. Now, some of you have heard about out-of-bounds planets, and I'd say that's the second best way to start using declination. Now, I'm not going to go into great detail about out-of-bounds in this video, but I will tell you how to spot an out-of-bounds planet using your declination table. If you look at the table and you see that a planet is greater than 23 degrees and 26 minutes, we call that planet out of bounds. Now, a rookie mistake here is to look in the horoscope wheel at those numbers, and those aren't going to tell you if a planet is out of bounds. So make sure you're looking at the declination grid. But why 23 degrees and 26 minutes? That's because that planet has a declination that's higher than the sun can ever reach. The sun's limit is currently 23 degrees and 26 minutes, but some planets can go further north or south than that, and when they do, we call them out of bounds. Now, we've noticed that out of bounds planets have some special characteristics. One of them is that being out of bounds seems to add more extremes to that planet's expression. You could think of it as just a big exclamation point on that planet, or just a strong emphasis of that planet's energy. So if Venus is out of bounds, it's a strong expression of Venus. Now, that's a great place to start, but we still have to take stock of all of our other astrology techniques, like analyzing analyzing the house and the sign of Venus, as well as its aspects. But this extra piece of information can really enhance your chart interpretation work. Many astrologers who use declination claim that it feels like a crucial missing ingredient to chart interpretation. If we only measure a planet's longitude relative to the ecliptic, we're tuning out an important piece of information about where that planet is in space. Declination helps us fill out the whole picture. Since declination is also really easy to see in the night sky, it's arguably an important measurement that we should all be taking into account. Declination can show us connections between planets that aren't seen using only longitude, whether that's in the natal chart or by transit. Now, you might assume that declination is a totally modern technique, and you'd be right about that when it comes to out-of-bounds planets. But because declination is easy to see in the night sky, astrologers have known about declination since the beginning of our craft, and this dates back at least as far as Ptolemy, and arguably much further. And we think that because ancient monuments seem to have planetary declination built into their construction. Many astrologers through the years have worked with declination, even the ancients. One theory about why it fell out of use in more recent times is that the American ephemerists stopped including declination tables in their ephemeris, which was really popular. But today, they do make a special ephemeris that includes declination, and you can also find the tables in the free Swiss ephemeris online, and also, of course, in your astrology software. Astrologers use declination in natal analysis, in timing, and even in progressions work. I teach a course introducing some of those applications to declination called Intro to Declination at Astrology University. Well, I promised I'd show you how to spot declination in your astrology software, so let's do that before we wrap up. I'm going to show you an example using AstroGold for Mac. This is an AA-rated chart for the comedian Hassan Minhaj. As I said earlier, you can't see declination in the chart wheel, and you're going to have to track down that declination table. In AstroGold, that table is found under Listings. Once you open the listings, you can sort by the declination aspect. But for now, I've already done this for you so that we can just look at the declination numbers in the pop-up window here. Now you can also see the longitude listed in one column and declination is listed in another. Let's take the moon today. The moon's longitude is listed as 24 Capricorn. Now look at the natal wheel. You'll see that number matches the moon at 24 Capricorn. Again, that's because the natal wheel numbers are a measurement of longitude. Now look at the moon's declination. See how it's a different number and it doesn't include the sign? That's your clue that you're looking at declination. And here we have the number 26 with the letter S in the middle and the number 10. By the way, the S stands for south. So sometimes in AstroGold, you'll see an N and that stands for north. So Hassan's declination for his moon is 26 south 10. Take a look at the table and you'll see the declination listed for each of the other planets as well. Now for some extra credit, does anybody remember that number for out-of-bounds planets that I said earlier? It's 23 degrees and 26 minutes. Now look at Hassan's moon. Notice how it's higher than that? It's 26 degrees south. This means his moon is out of bounds. Now, we can see that his moon is also in Capricorn, and that comes with a particular set of challenges that a person with moon in Capricorn needs to be conscious of. And it's also angular, meaning it's just 3 degrees from his descendant angle, so we'd say it's conjunct an angle. And if that weren't enough emphasis already, his moon is also the ruler of his Cancer ascendant. So his moon is extra powerful, extra powerful. You can't underestimate it. And he's going to need to develop awareness around his moon in the context of his relationships, especially because his committed relationships are probably so important to him. The good news is that relationships seem to apply their own pressure that forces all of us to do that personal growth work, as any of you in a committed relationship I'm sure know. So I'm sure if we mentioned it to him, he'd know exactly what we were talking about. Okay, well I hope I've piqued your curiosity a bit about declination and that you're ready to learn more. Join us at Astrology University where we have support and community to help you get started. Well, I'll see you next time, and until then, take good care.